today we're going to talk about some advice we have for cruising like a pro.
That's right.
And let's start off at the beginning of the cruising experience. Let's start
Very
before
beginning.
before you're even on the cruise. So let's talk about pre-cruise, being like a pro before you're even on the cruise.
Right.
So I'm going to throw out the first tip, and if you want to follow with whatever other tips that you have, we're going to do this kind of
Tag team.
Tag team, okay. Or I was going to say informally, but as you can see, we're doing this off the cuff, kind of.
Off the cuff,
And
no
I'm
cuffs.
Not even, yeah.
We don't need to have cuffs.
Yes. So first tip is, if you haven't cruised before, if you're feeling like lost, you don't know what cruise line, you don't know what ship, you're not sure what to do, like I said, you can watch a channel like ours that talks about the different cruise ships and stuff, but a travel advisor can be a great resource. A travel advisor, or they sometimes call them a travel agent.
Yes.
They can help you out. And for cruises, they typically don't charge you a darn thing, and they can get you as good or better deals than you can find on your own.
They can.
So,
and they can get you special deals too.
That's right. Don't shy away from talking to a travel advisor, because you don't pay them, the cruise lines pay them. So that is a great resource. What else should we talk about cruising like a pro when it comes to before you even get on the cruise? And I'll just say one thing. We're not talking about packing in this cruise, because we did another cruise, which we've linked down below in the description, where we talked about cruise essentials, and that was more focused on actual like packing. What should you take with you? So anything else you should do before you go on a cruise, things you should be sure you have aside from packing and stuff like that.
Just to have your mind at ease, pay off your cruise beforehand.
Don't wait until the deadline has come and passed, because a lot of cruise lines will cancel your cruise if you don't pay by that final date. And you want to be sure you have the important documents. You want to do your check-in in advance. That makes it much easier to go through the embarkation day very smoothly. If you have your checked in, done everything you need to at a time, get you all set up, get your boarding pass printed out, or have it on your phone.
Have all your important paperwork in a file or in a binder or someplace, and you put it next to your packed suitcase.
There you go. And passports typically are going to be required. There may be other documents. Be sure to check with the cruise line, and your travel advisor can help you with that too. Before we talk about the most exciting day of all, which is cruise day,
embarkation day.
Yes. Any other tips that we should throw out there for before they even get on the ship, or before the day of cruising?
I would also make sure you have at least one credit card, and also extra cash.
Extra cash
for tipping. You need some cash for tipping.
For tipping, and also if you get off the ship in a port, you may want to have some cash.
Yes. For a meal or something.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so now let's talk about the what we all want to talk about. We all want to get to, and that's the day of your cruise.
Yes.
That's the day where you board the ship.
Right.
That's the day where you get to the cruise port and you get on board. So for starters, if you're flying in for your cruise, our recommendation, and now since we live in Florida, we can usually just drive to the port same day. But if you're flying from another state like we used to when we lived in Minnesota, you might want to consider flying on the day before, just in case there's a weather delay or a travel delay or something.
You never know what the weather will be like, especially if you're planning a cruise in January or February.
Yeah, unexpected things can happen, so give yourself a little bit of room, and that applies to the end of the cruise too, I think, but especially getting there, you don't want to literally miss the boat or ship by not being there on time.
And you don't want that extra added stress of flying in and then rushing to the cruise port. You don't need that extra stress.
Okay, so you referred to it earlier. I think we both already used this term, but let's talk about our first cruising term that we want to share that you can use so you'll sound like a cruising pro. The day that you board the ship, what do you call that process of boarding the ship?
It's called embarkation.
That's right. Embarkation is your first cruise term. You can sound like a pro walking around saying, hey, it's time for embarkation. Oh, I'm embarking today. Embarkation day. It's
and what does that mean?
It means you're boarding the ship for your cruise.
Exactly.
Embarkation.
You're embarking on a new adventure.
That's right. So you've flown into the city that your cruise is starting in. You're headed to the port, you took a cab, maybe you prearranged some transportation, which is also can be a really good tip. Sometimes you might want to book a hotel that provides a shuttle to the port. That can be a really good tip. We talked about that in our Port Canaveral video. But you get to the parking garage or you get dropped off there by friends, family, shuttles, what have you. You're at the port. You see the ship. It's going to really happen. It's embarkation day. It's cruise day. The first person you may have contact with before you even walk into the building is another term that is good to know. And this term is used outside of cruising, but an important term and a very important person that you'll deal with is called a porter.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and a porter is a person that you may see outside of the cruise terminal, and they're there to help you with any checked luggage that you want to have taken to your room for you. Typically, your larger suitcases, things you're not going to need right away. Let's talk about that. What sort of tips should you give people as far as the luggage that they give to the porter?
So you give them your checked bag.
Okay.
So because your checked bag will go to your suite or your room on board the ship. So the only thing that you would need to carry is your purse or your backpack, your carry-on bag, as you would say, that has your important like medicine and change of clothing, swimsuit.
Your credit card, boarding pass, passport, stuff like that you're going to need as you actually check in, as you go into the terminal and get on the ship. You'll want those things out of any bags that you give to the porter. And your carry-on bag, if you need special medicine or something, if you have a CPAP machine, something like that, you want to carry that on with you. But of course, you don't want to carry everything on with you because you may not have, and you likely won't have access to your stateroom or your cruise cabin right away. So be sure to have a backpack or a shoulder bag or something with you that you can just have the basic things you'll need for the afternoon, because it might be a few hours before you get to your room.
Right.
And it could be even, an hour or two more before you see your other bags.
Exactly.
You mentioned tipping earlier. We recommend, and it's our practice, that we'll tip the porters. It's up to you how much, but we'll typically do, I don't know, a few dollars a bag or something. But they don't work typically don't work directly for the cruise line, and they're just there making livings strictly off the tips. So keep that in mind when you're.
And the porters really help you because you don't have to carry or lug the huge check bags. You can just walk on board the ship with your backpack and
and just head on
without any problems.
Head on board. You'll go through the check-in process, and that can vary by. We've seen it vary quite a bit over the years that we've cruised, and different cruise lines. But it's becoming more streamlined, it seems like. Then you finally get on board the ship. Very exciting. You go and probably look for some food or something to drink, or maybe both, and you're relaxing. But the ship's getting ready to go. They're finishing up getting your room ready to go.
Yes.
Everything behind the scenes is getting ready to go. And that's where I'm going to throw out this is kind of a random cruise term. It can sound really like a real pro throwing this one out. Joy, do you know what bunkering is?
No.
Bunkering. This is a term that is used when it comes to ships, not just cruise ships, but bunkering is a term, and I'll give you a hint. They may make an announcement when the ship is bunkering and saying, until we make another announcement, please do not smoke in any areas on the ship. Why would they say no smoking at that certain time? That go for an hour or two. Bunkering. What's happening to the ship?
Well, the only thing I can think of is that they're going to throw the ropes and they don't want loose ash.
No, they want to burn the ropes. No, it's even before that.
Okay.
It's like when you go to the gas station. You better not smoke at the gas station. When they're bunkering, they're fueling the ship. They pull up a big fuel barge and they fuel up the ship so it's ready to go. So bunkering, if you want to really sound like a pro, you can throw out that term bunkering. So
I thought it was you're saying, I want the top bunk.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with the beds. No, it's not about bunks. No, it does kind of sound like that, but it's not that. So let's move on. We talked about, and we're going to get to talking about some of the activities and tips for while you're on board in just a minute. But let's talk about a couple more important people that you might encounter on that very first day.
Okay.
The person that you'll probably have the most interaction with throughout the course of any cruise you're on is called a steward, room steward, cabin steward. Can you tell
room
people?
Attendant.
Yeah. Can you tell people what a steward, what their role is?
They take care of your room, so you don't have to clean or make your bed. They do all of that for you. So when you leave in the morning to do an excursion or do an event on board the ship, you come back and there's a towel animal sometimes or
yes.
your bed is made and there's a little piece of chocolate sometimes.
Wow.
But your room is all clean and tidy.
Well, they sound magical.
I know, they are magical.
Wow. Yeah, your steward is also a great resource for information. If you get to your room and you realize, there's something we need for our room. Oh, we don't know where to go on the ship. Oh, we don't know how a process works. How do we find where to go for dinner? Things like that. That is a great person to go to ask questions like that.
Right. Or if you need like extra soap or towels, they're the person that you would talk to. Or if you want to surprise your spouse and do something special, you can let the room steward know.
Nice.
Not that it's going to happen soon, but okay. But sometimes, if you want to plan something special to have in the room, they'll help you get that arranged.
So that's a great tip. If you need help with something, if you have questions, the first person to talk to is your room steward or cabin steward. We've had some really great experiences with room stewards or cabin stewards, and if they go above and beyond, that's somebody that they typically are included in the standard gratuities on most cruise lines. But there's somebody that if they're awesome, you may want to tip them extra. You were talking about surprises. Let's talk about, what if you have a bad surprise? What if you were trying to book a specialty dining restaurant, or you found out that you were seated at a table with a large party and you wanted to have a romantic dinner one night? Who would you go talk to about that?
The maitre d'.
That's right. And you may have heard this term outside of cruising. The term is definitely used in other businesses and hotels and restaurants. But the maitre d', typically you'll find them in the main dining room, but also in the specialty restaurants, they may have a maitre d', and you can go talk to the maitre d' and make any special requests. And again, if you have questions or whatever, but they're basically kind of running the show as far as getting everybody seated and taking care of special requests.
And we've actually used them too, because one time when we tried to book a specialty dining, it was full at the time of booking. But when we got on board the ship, I went to the maitre d' of that specialty place, and I said, by the way, is there any openings or canceled reservations to see if we can get in on that specialty dining?
I think you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're talking about when we booked Palo, but we wanted to get Palo brunch, and we could not reserve Palo brunch in advance on the Disney Dream. And so you said, well, let's talk to the maitre d'.
Yeah.
And the maitre d' was like, oh, sure. What time did you want?
Yeah.
And it was like, no problem. It's like, oh, we had a special connection. So
remember, if you don't ask, you don't know.
Right. Okay. Any other special tips for the first day on board that people should know about?
Yes. Okay. So one thing is you can either, depending on what ship you go to, a lot of people, when they get on board a ship, they like to go to the Lido deck and go to the buffet, the main buffet area. So the buffet has tons of food. They're not going to run out. So you don't need to pile your plate with food, because they will still have food available for the whole cruise. So we always can tell that it's a newbie when we see piles of food on their plate.
Wow.
So
they think they can only go one time.
Right.
Every cruise we've been on, there's been more than enough.
More than enough. So
But you made me think of another tip, which is good. On the first day, everybody typically goes to the buffet, but it can be good to ask if there's any other restaurants that are open.
Mm-hmm.
And on some cruise lines, like Carnival comes to mind, they've got Guy's Burger Joint and Blue Iguana, and you can go to them and get complimentary included food there. Because it might be a shorter line.
Right, and some ships have smaller buffet areas where they have the same food, but it's in a different part of the ship,
Right.
And it's less busy.
Yep.
So,
and A Sea Lake Journeys is mentioning the muster drill, and the muster drill lately on our last couple of cruises has been a little different. It used to be a little more involved process where you're getting together at a certain time when they make the announcement.
So
you're standing
tedious.
there out on the deck, usually, sometimes in a venue, and you're hearing all the safety information. But these days, lately, they've been doing it where it's more of a, you go to your muster station, and that's another, I should have put that on a card for a term too, muster station. That basically is your safety, your station you go to for your lifeboat in case of an emergency.
Right.
A very unlikely chance that you need to use one of the lifeboats.
Not
you
mustard,
go to your muster station.
Not mustard like the condiment. It's muster.
Yeah, muster like Robin and Chet put here in the comment.
Exactly.
So you want to get that out of the way and taken care of. They'll bug you and look for you and let you know if you don't get that done. You'll have to do makeup homework, because everybody's required to go through it. Even with some of the processes now, the safety drills, the muster drills are a lot more simple and straightforward. It's just like you check some stuff on the phone. They show you how to put on a life jacket and you're done.
It is a breeze, and just thank your lucky stars that you don't have to.
Well, at least right now you don't have to do that way. You don't know what's in the future.
I hope it doesn't go back to what it was before.
I hope it stays that way too. But thanks for that, Sea Lake Journey. Sea Lake Journeys, that's a great mention for a first day. So We've talked about embarkation day. Let's move on to talking more generally about just the experience of being on board the ship. And here we can talk about a much more vast array of tips and tricks and terms. And we got to start with one of the most important terms that we've thrown around on videos before without even thinking about it. And that's the thing, is you'll hear people that have cruised a lot saying, "Oh, don't call it a boat, it's a ship," and stuff like that. And that's true. That's people typically who've cruised a lot will call it a ship instead of a boat, just out of a sign of respect. But we like to talk about food, so I got to throw out for our first term here. Well, MDR.
Yes.
Joy, what is the MDR?
MDR is an acronym for main dining room.
MDR. Yeah, MDR stands for main dining room, and you'll hear people on board and in other cruise videos talking about the MDR. Got to go to the MDR. Are you going to the MDR? I'm going to the MDR. And there can be more than one main dining room on board a ship. For example, the Disney ship that we were just talking about had 3 main dining rooms. So I don't know what you're pointing
to the little Disney.
I thought you were pointing in my head. Okay.
The little Disney ship.
Okay, yes. So
it's not little, but we have a little salt.
This is supposed to be cruising like a pro. What's happening to us? So, yes, there may be more than one main dining room on board, but typically, when you're referring to any of the main dining rooms, people who've cruised often may call them the MDRs.
Yes.
That's opposed to a specialty dining restaurant, right?
That's correct.
Right. Okay, so there's the MDR.
Right.
That's one of the main places to go to eat.
Yes.
The other place, you mentioned a term earlier. You mentioned Lido. What exactly does Lido mean?
The Lido is the main deck area.
The Lido is the deck on a cruise ship where you'll find the main pools. And on a lot of the cruise lines, they also have the buffet and a lot of the other food areas. So the Lido, if someone says they're going to the Lido, they may be saying they're going to go hang out by the pool, or they may mean they're going to the buffet, or they're going to go get a burger, or they're going to go, there could be a lot of things.
Or go see a movie,
yeah, because some of the ships have movie screens on the Lido deck.
Right.
So the Lido deck is one of the key decks. Even cruise lines that don't give their decks specific names, they just call them by number. They usually will also call the deck with a pool on it the Lido deck.
That's right.
So that's kind of a traditional thing. The Lido deck is where you're going to go to be near the pool, be outside, and probably find some food if you want it.
That's where a lot of the activities are done.
Yeah, it varies by
Usually on
cruise
them.
ship and by cruise line. Thinking of some of the Royal Caribbeans, like the Oasis class ship, you got their main area, what's it called, the Royal Promenade, and there's a lot that goes on, and they've got the neighborhoods on there. So it may be more's going on there than on the actual Lido deck on those ships. But
Mhm.
most cruise ships I can think of, the Lido deck is like kind of the main deck for activities, at least outside activities.
That's right.
So that's a good one to know. Lido or
Lido.
Lido deck. Yes.
Lido.
What are you doing? Okay. What other tips should people know about for what anytime they're on, like on a sea day, when they're on the ship, to cruise like a pro? What should people know about while they're on board? Just random days during the cruise.
You can relax. You don't have to do a million things.
Yeah.
If you feel like doing a trivia or dance class, you can, but you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do anything you don't want to do because you're on vacation,
Right.
and you can just relax.
Yep. And a couple. Let me mention, you sparked my memory of something we mentioned recently from what cruise was it? I think it was on our last Disney cruise,
Mhm.
where you went to a show that I didn't go to, and just because you were the first one there, you won a prize.
I did.
So go do trivia, go to shows, but just showing up early and just being there and participating, you can win prizes and get recognition. It can be and have a lot of fun.
Right.
But like you're saying, don't feel like you have to do everything, because when you look at the list of activities,
There's a lot.
there is a lot. Which reminds me of another tip. Most of these cruise lines now have these apps that you can download for your phone.
Mhm.
Download them before you get on the cruise ship so you have them so you're ready, because those typically will come in really handy for looking at activities on board,
Yep.
for checking your bill, being sure you haven't gotten too out of hand with the drinks and the shopping and everything on board. But those can come in really handy too.
Yep.
Another thing with the ship shows is, if you missed a show that you really want to see and they're not planning to do it again during the cruise, keep an eye during your downtime when you're in cabin. Keep an eye out on the TV, because usually they'll have a lot of the cruise lines, or the ones that we've been on, they'll replay a lot of the shows from your cruise on the TV in your room.
Exactly.
Finding them might be a little tricky in the schedule, but click on the TV channel that shows the onboard activities, and you might see something you missed.
Right. And if you ever have any questions that you don't know what the answer would be, go to the customer service desk and ask them, or ask anybody on board the ship, really. But if it's more specific, ask your customer service. Yep.
And we've got a question here. Chris, I see your question about going to Alaska. How cruising in Alaska is so awesome. And we're going to get to your question in just a minute, because we're going in order on these. But we want to get to that in just a minute, because that's a great question. And we want to say hello to Cruising Scene and Down Under Cruisers. Great to have you here.
I heard that Down Under Australia is back open for cruising.
Things are starting to improve there.
I hope so.
We hope that's true.
I've been praying for you guys to have it reopened.
Yes. So let's get back to our cruising tips for the days that you're actually on the ship when you're on board. Talking about tips for getting around the ship.
Yeah.
Couple things. Let's throw out a couple more cruise terms. What is the aft? The aft of the ship.
So you taught me.
No.
You taught me the best
don't
way.
Don't credit me with this. I don't want. Don't give me.
I thought you taught me this trick.
You dreamed this. Go ahead and tell me your tip. How to remember aft.
So the aft is 3 letters. Is 3 letters.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's the back of the ship. It's the end of the ship.
Yes, and what does that have to do with 3 letters?
So it's just like your butt.
Or a donkey, yes.
Or a donkey. It's the back of the ship.
AASS. Yes, let's just leave it at that. I think we're being pretty obvious there. So that's how you remember aft.
Yes.
So when you're finding for directions around the ship on the ship diagram, or when it's saying where an event is or something, it may say aft or A for aft, and that means you need to go towards the back of the ship. Typically for the front of the ship, they'll say forward, and midship, of course, is midship.
So forward is the front. Forward, front, aft, back.
Yep. Good. Down Under Cruises responded. They said, "Not cruising yet. Hopefully after March 18th." So that's getting close.
Okay.
We'll keep praying for you, right?
Yes.
Let's keep that up. So let's move on. So before we finish up talking about finding your way around the ship, another couple directions you need to know about are port and starboard.
Oh, I
Port
know.
and starboard. Port and starboard. So these are the two sides of the ship. So aft is at the back, forward is at the front. Midship, of course, is in the middle. But the two sides, when you're facing forward, port is on the left side, and starboard is on the right side. And the way I remember this now, and I think I have to credit Manara on Sea Cruisers for saying this tip, and I don't know where she heard it from or if she figured it out, but she said left is 4 letters, and so is port.
Oh, see?
Right is
More than
5
4.
letters. Yeah, so that's one way to remember. Port is on the left, and I guess that used to be back in the day. That was the side they usually docked on, so that's why they called it. That's a port side. That's the side that you would go to port on.
And starboard is on the right, which is
the other side. I don't have an explanation for that one. But those are directions that you may want to know too. If you're trying to find something on board, you're trying to meet up with somebody. Oh, I'm on the starboard side. What does that mean? Well, there you go. You want to sound, even if you can't remember which is which, you could sound like a cruising pro just by saying, "Oh, I was on the starboard side and saw a beautiful sunset." Yeah, well, you can sound like a pro.
There you
Cruise
go.
pro. So, other tips for I want to get to talking about what Chris is asking about. But any other tips that we should throw out there for just in general sea days being on board the ship? Other tips that can come in handy.
If you forgot your beach towel and you're going to the pool, all the pools have beach or have towel stations available. And sometimes when you're docked at a port, they also offer towels that you can bring to
take on land, like to their private islands and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, double check on that to see what this particular cruise ship does. But you want to be prepared. You don't want to go without a towel.
Yeah, if you're gonna go use the pools, you definitely want a towel.
That's right. That's right. So we could do a whole bunch of tips about about things like that and about stuff to do in your stateroom, like we talked about an inside cabin.
We could do in
no. You already did the aft thing. Let's stop there. We're supposed to be talking about cruising like pros, not whatever that was. So let's talk about just in the stateroom. A couple quick little tips. If you're in an inside stateroom, that means inside or what do they call it?
Windowless.
Well, yes, there's no windows because it's the inside of the ship.
It's very
inside
dark.
or I'm trying to remember the other term. Inside or inner? No, inside. Interior. Inside or interior cabin. Oof.
I was like, where is
it gets really dark at night, and if you don't like it really dark in the room at night, or you're worried you're going to stub your toe going to the bathroom,
that's me.
Bring a
tea light,
like one of those battery operated little key light candles.
Don't bring a candle on.
No, you can't have a real candle. That's the fire is not good on a cruise ship. So have a little light to assist you.
Yes.
We've also got this motion light that my brother got us. That's when you get up and you move in front of it, it turns on.
Yeah,
so
that's really nice.
That comes in really handy too. So there's different things you can have, but for an interior cabin, that can be really good to have. I know you've talked about it's good to bring some air freshener for the bathroom because it's a very small enclosed space.
Yes.
Also magnets to put things on the walls because most of the walls in your cabin are going to be metal. You can stick your papers on the wall if you want to do something like that, or hang your hats with little hooks.
Or your lanyards. And that's the... Speaking of lanyards,
okay.
If you're a professional cruiser, you bring your own lanyard. You can buy a lanyard too, but you have your own lanyard, and the lanyard is for your cruise card.
Okay.
And it's like your money, like your credit card. So you
Right.
don't want to lose that and leave it behind. So that's why a lot of people you'll see on board the ship wearing lanyards.
Yeah, just like you would use for a lot of people use at work for their work ID, their work badge that they have to show to get in and out of the building. Most of the cruise lines use a cruise card that opens your room, but it also you pay for drinks, you identify yourself for reservations, and you buy things at the stores with them. Very important to have. If you don't want to put in your wallet or purse, very convenient to have it on lanyard. So I think that's a really good tip.
I use my cruise lanyards at work because it reminds me of when I was on a cruise.
Well, that can be fun too. So, okay. So that's a lot of, I think that's some pretty good tips. Let's talk about cruising and how to cruise like a pro, even when you're in port. So I wanted to go back to a question that Chris had asked. Chris, let's see.
About Alaska.
Yeah, Chris had said going on Carnival Miracle to Alaska this year. First trip to Alaska. Oh, Alaska.
So jealous.
Alaskan cruises are awesome. Any feedback about Icy Strait Point and Victoria, going to Juneau, Skagway, Icy Point, Victoria, Victoria, British Columbia. So we've gone to Alaska on one cruise so far, so we can only, from personal experience, can only go by that. We've got a couple videos where we shared information on that, and we had one of our friends from Canada do a video about her cruises on her cruise experience, so she might have some information in there. We didn't do Icy Strait Point, and we stopped in Victoria, but we didn't get off the ship there. So we can't really say much about it.
Exhausted.
Yeah, Juneau and Skagway, two of my favorite ports that we've been to anywhere.
I like Skagway.
Skagway was my favorite too. It has a real nice, it's a real nice little kind of old town feel. That Main Street there with the wood plank sidewalks and a lot of shops and little restaurants and cafes, and they've got the Skagway Brewing has got a nice little spot you can go there, and a little beer garden. You can go there and enjoy some fresh beer. Yeah, Skagway is really awesome. So I would recommend that they offer a what's called the White Pass Railway, which was a lot of fun. If you're wanting to get a lot of activities in, though, any of the railway experiences. Excursions are going to take up a big chunk of your time there.
Take a lot of your time.
So if you're unless that's something you're super big on wanting to do, consider maybe saving that for a future visit. Because it was great going up, but on the way back down, you're just like, we just want to be back down in Skagway so we can explore the town. And then we didn't have as much time. But we really did enjoy that. In Juneau, that's where we did
whale watching.
Yeah. Which I honestly thought, okay, I guess that's what you do, and I wasn't that excited about it, but I really enjoyed it. It was really cool.
It was so awesome.
Yeah.
So the big tip about being a professional cruiser is you don't need to book an excursion at every port because you'll exhaust yourself. Yeah. So choose maybe one or two excursions that you both want to do. Like, so I chose the Juneau, he chose the White Pass
Railway.
Right. And that would have been fine, but we did a newbie
newbie mistake, amateur mistake. We weren't cruising like pros, were we?
No.
And our first stop had been Ketchikan.
Right.
And we did the trolley to see the totem poles and some other things and do shopping and stuff like that. And so by the time, we were already starting to get tired by the time we got to Skagway, I think. Right. And I think that's part of the reason in Victoria we just decided to stay on board. But the Alaskan cruise is not to be missed. And
so just try and decide what are the most important thing that you would want to do. And so you give yourself time to be a tourist, to walk around, to enjoy the town or the sights or whatever. So
absolutely. Yeah. So when let's back up a little bit and talk a little more broadly about cruising like a pro when you're going to port. So a port of call is basically any port that the ship takes you to, right? Mm-hmm. Your home port is where you start your cruise. Port of call are places where you stop, you get off the ship, and you get back on. Let's see. Yep. Yeah, Juneau, the best suggestion I can give you is the whale watching, if that sounds interesting to you at all. But if anybody else has ideas, throw it out. But there's also that, I forget the name of that pub. There's a pub there in town, and there's a restaurant, which Is that where the red onion is?
I think
forget.
so.
I may be getting Juneau and Skagway mixed up. So if anybody
Yeah.
else knows, comment or put it in the chat. Yeah. Oh, Carnival Horizon. Wow.
It's a nice ship.
First trip to the U.S. and first trip on a Carnival ship into the Caribbean. That's very exciting.
Oh,
That'll be a lot of fun.
make sure you get a guy's burger.
Yeah.
So delicious.
Well, yes, they are.
And try their blue iguana breakfast burrito. That's what he likes to
yes,
get.
Yes. Anyway, we're getting off topic. We're supposed to be talking about cruising like a pro when you're in port. Let's throw out a couple of terms because the way it works, if you haven't cruised before, is there's a couple different ways you're going to get off the ship to get to your port, your ports of call. One is kind of similar to the way you got on the ship to start with when you first got on board on embarkation day, and that's you basically walk off. Now you're probably going to walk off the ship and walk back on at the end of your time in port on a different level than you did when you boarded in at the terminal, because you're going to use the gangway. And the gangway, at least in the ports of call, is typically on a lower level. Could be deck 0, deck 1, deck 2, but you want to check before, when it's time for you to get off the ship, check your cruise planner, check your app, and see exactly where you need to go to get off the ship. And you'll want to take your cruise card with your lanyard, if you have a lanyard like you were talking about, and head to the gangway. The gangway is just the walkway, that like a little ramp that you'd get on and off the ship with, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah. Did I bring that card back too soon?
You did.
I'm sorry. Okay. So yeah.
And also pay attention to the what's the term, to go back on board the ship?
Oh, the ship time. Yeah.
The ship time, because to be a professional cruiser, you're aware of the ship time to be back on. You don't want to be known as the pier runner. So you don't want to miss your ship.
That's the opposite of a cruising pro, is a pier runner.
Exactly.
It can happen by accident, but if you're careful, hopefully you can avoid it. It's something you don't want to experience. So do you want to explain what a pier runner is exactly? You kind of did.
A pier runner is a person who is running on the pier toward their ship.
Why are they running?
And because their ship is leaving
or is
the
about
port,
to leave, yes.
Or is about to leave the
so
port.
They're late. They're late getting back to the ship. Either they lost track of time, maybe they went to Senior Frogs and had a few too many. Maybe they didn't have their watch set to the right time.
They were shopping too much.
Yes.
Haggling.
And so you want to tell the story we were in Nassau. I don't remember what ship it on. It might have been Carnival Liberty.
I want to say it was a Carnival ship.
We had an aft cabin.
Yes.
And we had a really good view of the pier, and we were back on board, and we were about to get ready to change for dinner. And on the back of the ship, at least on the layout of this ship, you could kind of see around, so your neighbors up above you, down below you, next to you, whatever.
Right.
One of our neighbors in one of those balcony cabins had purchased something in Nassau.
They had bought a conch shell, and they knew how to blow the conch shell. So when they blew the conch shell, it sounded like the horn of a Carnival ship.
The ship horn.
So they would blow it really loud, and then they would yell or shout down below to the people on the pier saying, "Run,
hurry
up,
we're
leaving."
Yes.
It was the funniest thing.
It was kind of mean, but it was funny. Especially when you'd see people running past the lines that were still moored to the pier and running like they were, like the ship was going to really leave that quickly.
I'm sorry.
Enough said about that.
I was laughing, but because it was just so funny.
Hey, Tyler, you're here just in time to hear us tell the pier runner story again. So anyway, don't be a pier runner. Be a cruising pro.
Yes.
So we mentioned one of the ways you can get off the ship when you're in a port of call is on the gangway, and then you can return to the ship the same way at the gangway, showing your sign and sail card, your room key, your medallion, whatever. If you're on Princess.
Some ships use face. How do you say that?
Facial recognition, but I don't know if they're doing that at that point yet. So let's not get too far into that.
Okay.
I'm trying desperately to get to the point to say the other way you might have to get off the ship in a port is on a little tiny boat,
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
called a Tinder. And that's not to be confused with a social media app. Tinder is the traditional name for the little water taxis, little shuttle boats that take you from the lower level of the ship out across the water to the port. And you'll see those used in, sometimes smaller ports where they don't have the docks built out for whatever reason. And that can be another way you'll need to use to get to from the ship to port and back. And again, you don't want to lose track of ship time. You don't want to be late. But one of the two ways: gangway, walk right onto the pier, get back on time, or the Tinder.
Why do you laugh when you say Tinder?
I don't know.
Oh.
We got to say hi. We got Jen Reed here. Good to have you here. First time visiting us on the live. Great to have you here.
Yay.
We're trying to sound like pros here. We're trying to throw out some pro tips. So if anybody else has any pro tips, throw them in the chats. Comment if you're watching this in the future. Then share them with everybody else that's watching.
We're trying to help you become pro shippers.
Yeah, and you might have some pro shippers,
pro vacationers.
Cruisers.
Yeah, that's the term I'm
cruise
looking
day
for.
fun, not vacation day fun. Oh my. Yeah, give us some tips. We're basically just trying to get you guys to give us tips so we can steal them. So give us the tips. We need help. We want to be cruising pros.
Yes, we all want to be cruising pros.
That's right. And we got John and Nancy here from J&N Travels. Good to have you here.
Yes.
We're trying to be pros. We're trying to be like YouTube pros, but no, it's the most important thing is being a cruising pro, right?
Yeah.
So what else? I think we've covered almost all the cruise terms. What should people know? What are some cruise pro tips for being in port when you're visiting a port? If you go to Cozumel, you're going to Skagway, or you're going, St. Thomas, wherever it might be, or even the private islands. What would you suggest?
So if you go to an international port, usually the day before or the morning of, the cruise lines will have an informational meeting or event where they will explain about the shops at the port, what to look for, what to avoid, things like that.
Yep, that can be good. So watch your daily schedule or your app for information on when they do those. That can be really helpful. Also, you want to just be careful about being safe. If you're doing a excursion, you're going with an organized group, especially one organized by the ship. You're probably going to be good to go in a safe area. You're not going to have to worry about a whole lot. Just, of course, be aware of what's going on around you. But if you're going off on your own to one of these cruise ports, be aware. You're in an area, you're in a country where the laws are different than your own country. Be sure your belongings are protected, especially things like your passport.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would say be very cautious if you go to make some especially expensive purchases when you're shopping in a port, because we've seen some kind of questionable negotiations and questionable items being sold. Because if you buy an expensive piece of jewelry in a foreign port, you get back on the ship, you get back home, and your hand starts turning green. And
buyer beware.
Yeah, you may find out it wasn't worth $2,000. It might be worth $2. So
you may want to
be careful.
Right. So you may question yourself if they offer like a ring and they start at, let's say, $300 and they're bartering with you and it gets down to $20. You may want to reconsider.
And that's not to say that I'm not saying there's anything wrong with negotiating.
Right. They like that.
The bartering, that's a tradition in a lot of different cultures. But if it's that extreme, maybe there's a clue. So yeah, and we're sharing that from personal experience. And fortunately, we didn't take advantage of the amazing offer. But boy, this guy was watching for us.
Right.
And that's kind of what I was talking about just general safety. Getting off on the side streets away from the tourist areas in some of these ports,
just be
you
careful.
Might be seen as a target. Like, ooh, there's a wealthy American who, somebody might want to take advantage of.
Yeah.
So be safe out there. Cruising like a pro in port, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I know we've talked about before, and it's kind of an ongoing debate about whether or not you should take your passport with you when you get off the port in a foreign country, or if you should leave it on board the ship in the safe. We kind of do a compromise typically where we'll make photocopies of the passport and leave one on board, either a copy or the original on board, and to take the other with us. So
Yeah.
that's just, be thinking of those things, because if God forbid you become a pier runner, you want to be able to establish who you are.
Right. And then you're responsible for getting to the next port and showing your identity and all that. So you
Yep.
just don't want to be a pier runner.
No, you don't. You don't.
Nobody knows.
So, okay, so I hate to, we need to wrap up, and I hate to end this way, but this is the way a cruise works. Unfortunately, what happens, we get to the part of the cruise that you usually don't think about the most when you're planning it, and that is the last day of the cruise. So, a couple things. The last day, we talked about the first day, and that's called embarkation.
Right.
The last day of the cruise is called what? What's the term for that?
Debarkation.
Debarkation.
Yeah.
It's the day you have to get off the ship by a certain time, and they may even tell you have to get out of your room by a certain time and wait in a public area. And it's not the most fun part of the cruise because it's coming to an end. So a couple tips. One is the night before. There's a couple different ways you may get your luggage off of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the most common ways, and I'd say probably the most traditional ways, is that you leave your luggage in the hall the night before, and they pick them up. They have a tag. They give you a tag to put on it.
Those are usually your checked bags.
Those are your checked bags. And then sometimes they'll offer self-assist, where if you can handle all your luggage, you can carry it all off yourself, or wheel it all off yourself. But be sure you can handle it, because there'll be no one to assist you.
Nobody.
But if you're doing the most common option, which is to put your bags in the hall, you'll want to take advantage of that bag we mentioned on the embarkation day portion, the backpack or shoulder bag.
Or your carry-on bag,
Yep, and keep back your essential things you'll need for in the morning, because you'll need to figure out what you're going to have for overnight,
right?
What you're going to need for in the morning, like medication or anything. Clothes to wear in the morning.
Yeah,
we've seen a couple times people that appeared to be wearing their night cares, their night outfits, nightgowns. Maybe if you're a kid, you can get away with that, but you might feel a little funny wearing your nightgown, or gosh, I don't even want to think about what some people wear to bed. You don't want to be wearing those off of the ship. So hold back.
Unless you're really comfortable in pajamas.
Well, okay, but some people wear less than that. Let's not go there.
Okay.
So hold back what you need for overnight and in the morning, and put it in a bag. So that bag you used at the beginning for your carry-on bag, use it again for your carry-off bag for the last day on debarkation day. That is one of the most important tips, because you're going to want to have all that
medicine, your paperwork, your wallet,
toothbrush, toothpaste, the stuff you'll need in the morning.
And another important thing is, if you bought alcohol on any of your bought alcohol at any of the ports, international ports, you'll be able to pick up your alcohol the day of debarkation. So you don't want to forget your alcohol.
Or alcohol you bought on board. I think that's so cute that somebody that hardly drinks any alcohol at all is here giving tips on alcohol.
I don't want people to forget their alcohol.
I know you worry about me forgetting my alcohol. So yeah, that's one thing you may not know, is that if you come on board, if you buy some alcohol, like we bought some really awesome mango rum in the Bahamas one time, but when you get on the ship, come on the gangway getting back on board, they take it from you and they tag it and hold it for you till the last day.
And that's sometimes the same with photograph packages that you may have, or art, if you purchased art.
So don't forget to pick up your important items that final morning, because I don't know if
cruise ships will deliver or ship it out.
Yes, because that could be a problem. So that's our collection of tips for cruising like a pro. I'm sure we forgot a bunch of things. I bet we forgot a lot of special cruise terms you could throw out there. Put them in the comments and let us know what we've forgotten, and help us to cruise more professionally. We can use all the help we can get. We'll help you, but you help us.
Right.
It's like a partnership, right?
It is a partnership.
Okay. All right. So next Saturday at 3:00, we're going to be talking about cruising on a budget. So like I said, we've done a lot of these videos where we talked about, these specialty dining restaurants. You can go to Apollo, or you can go to Remy, or you can go to the steakhouse. Well, we're going to talk about how to cruise spending the least money possible. So that's if that's something that interests you, if you want to know how to cruise on the cheap, tune in next Saturday, 3:00 Eastern time, and we will talk about that. We're also hoping to have some special guests coming up in the near future, and we've got a lot more exciting topics coming. We've got a cruise on Norwegian Escape coming up in about a month, and we're going to share information and our experiences from that with you too. So if you're not subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe with that notification bell on. Doesn't cost you anything. It's just a way to keep track of what we're doing. And if they enjoyed this, what should they do?
Give us a thumbs up, because it really helps us. And give us a thumbs up. Comment below if you have anything else that we might have missed.
Yes.
And we really appreciate you watching this video.
Yeah. So thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. Bye.